Welcome to episode 440 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you as always by Bet365. It's never ordinary. You can get in the game at Bet365, either promo code NATION, NATION, to get on a huge range of things, including the big game, the championship, Super Bowl Sunday coming up this week. All the prop bets and more. Check it out at Bet365. I'm Jason Gregor, alongside former NHLer, Stanley Cup winner, Mike Rupp joins me, of course, every Friday on the pod. Rupper, how you doing, man?
I am good. Feels kind of weird having the last NHL games before this break, getting those behind us, but give us a little bit of a breather. We'll be excited about the international play now. But it's a long couple weeks, I think, for some teams. A little bit of the moment of truth when you come back for a lot of squads.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that for sure, because when you come back, some teams more than others have a pretty condensed schedule, and we'll see how they handle it. But let's start with well, first of all, Team Canada fills out their roster. Seth Jarvis and Sam Bennett both announced as replacements for Cirelli and Point, two guys who were on the Four Nations team who didn't make the cut, but now they're back. So it seems like, outside of Celebrini and Wilson, there's not a lot of new faces on this Canadian squad. And Suzuki.
No, no, there's not, and there's always going to be some arguments of who maybe the replacement should be, or if the player should have been on the original roster. But listen, Seth Jarvis he's playing. He's on a little run right now in Carolina. So, and like you said, he has that experience from Four Nations. They know what they're getting from him. Me personally, I was hoping for Zach Hyman. That was kind of one that I thought would be a really good fit. But I also think Seth Jarvis is as well, just because he's tenacious on pucks. I feel like he's a player that you could use him in multi ways, multi lines. He can have limited minutes and give you spark, just because that's what he does. So I got no problem with it. Like I said, I was probably leaning a little more towards Hyman, but I don't think you can go wrong.
Yeah, Hyman, I look at it because the plan was for Braden Point to play on McDavid's right wing. So to me, if you're like, hey, Point's out, we're finding a replacement for him. Now, you know what? You've got Tom Wilson, you've got Mark Stone, you've got Mitch Marner, and you got Seth Jarvis. So one of those four is obviously going to get the opportunity to play there. But I'd love to know the reasoning as to what, like, when you look at Zach Hyman, he scored a ton of goals, not just this year, but for the last 4 years amongst Canadian goal scorers, right? He's a really good forechecker. And, people say, oh, you can only play with McDavid. I don't think they watch him. Like Zach Hyman if Zach Hyman was on your third or fourth line at this event, you'd be pretty good. He knows how to forecheck defensively, all that stuff, but he's not there. And, hey, Seth Jarvis is a very skilled player. It's just interesting. They didn't really use him a ton at Four Nations. Yeah. So, and they didn't pick him. They took him off for other guys. So that's kind of why I'll be interested to see how the head coach uses him, if he's even one of the first 12 guys in the lineup opening day. I assume, you've got, it would be odd that you would bring guys who weren't on your original 12-man roster and then put them in over guys who were, you know what I mean? Like that would kind of seem odd to me. Like now Bennett's different because Cirelli was a center who was locked in. So I can see that position. But no, the Team Canada has, I think I counted 7 or 8 centers, right? McKinnon, McDavid, Crosby, Suzuki, Horvat, Bennett. I know I'm missing some, and Celebrini. So they got a lot of guys who can play center. So I'll be curious kind of what the combinations will be. I'm guessing they might change, but Canada will still be fine. I think there's probably more. If you talk to the average Canadian, they're more concerned about the defense than they are about the forwards.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I'd maybe throw in there, if we're nitpicking here, is we talk about right wingers playing on that right side. You've got Mark Stone. He's an incredibly smart player. I mean, I love what he brings to the table. Not a great skater. So on the right side, I'm not saying Zach Hyman to me is not a bad skater. I'm just saying Seth Jarvis is different. It gives you a little bit of a different look. So, I mean, that's being pretty nitpicky right there. But you're right. They've got some flexibility on their roster, and they're obviously looking for something, and they thought Seth Jarvis had it.
Now, speaking of teams, I guess it's not the defending champ because it wasn't the Olympics, but Canada did win the most recent major best on best tournament, Four Nations. So I think they come in as the favorite. And speaking of champs, Rupper, the champs lost again last night, the Florida Panthers to Tampa Bay. It was another fiery game. A few scraps, and Tkachuk going after Kucherov, and a pretty blatant cheap shot when he's on the power play, hits him from behind, and that's what Tkachuk does, right? He's a great agitator. And then him and Hagel have a scrap, and then Forsling has a scrap, and later on, Tampa sends the big guy out, and he gets 5-minute major kicked out, and it's kind of wild. But we wake up today, and the two-time defending champs, and I know there's lots of reasons why. Hey, Barkov's not there, but they're 8 points out, Rupper, and they're in 14th place. They're not in 9th place. They're in 14th place. I think it's safe to say on February 6th, the Florida Panthers are done. They're not making up that much ground in 25 games when play resumes.
So I would, it's hard for me to get to that point, but I think I'm there to agree with you here. I've always said that and not that I felt like, they're a guarantee as of this past week. I mean, I've always said I think they will get in, but it's hard for me to put that last nail in the coffin for the reasons of what you just mentioned. They're champs. They just find ways to get things done. But think about all those things you just said. Plus, they've got injuries currently. They have injuries that they have had on roster that they're trying to fight through. And they also have a slew of guys going over to Milan. So this is all kind of part of it here that doesn't really serve them well. You mentioned it too. A lot of road games, a lot of hockey after the break. So that's something that is of concern for me. But the bigger thing when I look at it too, and I do this with a lot of teams, I've kind of been looking, all right, who am I ruling out? And this is a team that I'm right there saying, yeah, I think they're done. Just look at their division, team in Buffalo. And I went through, and from December 9th to December 31st was their 10-game win streak. And this is just a little bit of a sample size to give an idea, because you can sit there and say 8 points. I mean, they can do 8 points. Why can't they do 8 points? Well, Buffalo went 10-0. So they garnered 20 points in that stretch. And in that stretch of time, I'm going to just rip off the rest of the division, because every team in the division was above Buffalo at that time. So you got a lot of teams to go through. And that's not even bringing in the Metro division. But that's what Florida's facing right now. They're last in the Atlantic. But in that stretch where you went 10-0, they only gained 5 points on Boston, 5 points on Tampa, 4 on Detroit, 5 on Montreal. Got a little bit more there, 10 on Toronto. Then it was 5 on the Florida Panthers, and then 9 on the Ottawa Senators. So the point being, you had some really bad hockey being played during that stretch from the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you had a 10-0 go for the Buffalo Sabres, and they were only at about the range that Florida needs right now. So the point is, it's hard. It is hard, and for the most part, there's some outliers in there. For the most part, most teams have most of their games in the other conference done. So you're going to have interdivision games. Someone's going to get points. It's when you're getting to that number 8, around 8, 7 points now, I think it's too much.
Yeah, I would agree. And the other thing is, and hey, when you've made it to 3 Stanley Cup finals in a row, sometimes you're going to sacrifice some things. And so if they miss the playoffs, their pick is not top 10 protected. Chicago owns that pick flat out from the Seth Jones trade. And you know what? So they won't have a first rounder. Now, the Panthers haven't really had to rely on first rounders for a long time. Any ones that they did have, some of them they traded. They've made their success built on really astute trades, finding Forsling on the waiver wire. And, I expect that to continue. Obviously, if Barkov comes back, and I know he's skating, he took the morning skate, he's obviously very close and he'll come back. But the thing is, Bobrovsky's, look at his save percentage. Yeah. So you can bring Barkov back, and that probably help because it'll be a better defensive team. But as you outline those numbers, Rupper, it's hard. You got to go on a heater of heaters to make up ground, because it's not, if they were in 9th place, I wouldn't have written them off. But they need to have lots of other teams play poorly for them to go from 14th. That's the difference. It's not just one team, it's 6 teams.
That's a great point, because it is such a different world if you're 8 points back, but you're in the the just out of wild card. If that 8 points, you're the next team. You're the ninth team, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it. Like that is a completely different world, because now you have a team or two in front of you. You should be like, I need them to trip up a little bit. You're asking 7 teams basically, or 6 or 5, whatever that number is, because some teams are pretty well into the playoffs and probably aren't going to come down. You're asking that many teams, and that's not even talking about the Metro. You throw a few more teams in from the Metro division, because that's a path there as well, as far as whatever shakes out there. You're asking all these teams in the most important time of the year to play subpar hockey. It isn't going to happen. You might get it by 1 or 2 teams. We've seen teams crumble down the stretch. You're not going to get a whole division to crumble down the stretch. So all those teams are getting ready, and they're dealing with some of the same stuff. So they're looking to have their game peak at that time.
Yeah, some people say you guys shouldn't be surprised because no Barkov, Kachuk's been out for a long stretch, and that's valid. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
But, the Panthers, a few weeks ago, they were right there. It's just lately that they've fallen back. And a lot of it has to do with, hey, Columbus has won 7 in a row. And, Boston and Buffalo and Montreal and Detroit, they've all continued, to always, I can't remember the last time one of them didn't have a 6 or 7 wins in a 10-game stretch. Like they've all played consistent now for 3 months. And it's just slowly been an erosion where if you go back, I think on January 1st, the Panthers were only, I think it was 2 points out, might even be in. Got to double check that.
Yeah.
But it's been like lately here, and they've just fallen off. And I find it's going to be too much for them. There's some other teams though that are hugely disappointing. The New York Rangers, terrible. The New Jersey Devils, they're even worse off than the Rangers. Obviously, Jack Hughes, they didn't get the goaltending they want, and they're out of it now again too. The Philadelphia Flyers, I think, probably slid back to more of a realistic spot.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the Maple Leafs? Because they're only 2 points up on the Panthers. They're 6 back, and they got 25 games to go. Like, I know it's only 2 points less, but I don't see them in much more of a favorable position than Florida, to be honest.
No, and it's funny because I kind of had them out prior to this, stating that we think the Panthers are out. So again, you're going to be talking about they've won 3 in a row now, but you're basically asking for them they're going to have to go on a 9 out of 10, and that is no guarantee that's going to put them in. You're going to have to follow up a 9 out of 10 if you want to go in the next 10 games. You're going to have to go like probably a 7 and 10. You know what I mean? Like it's nothing that even a 9-game win streak is going to solve. Like that's kind of our point here. And they haven't really shown us any indication of showing that kind of consistency and dominance. So yeah, I have them out. I don't see them getting in. This is something too. You always wonder, the big component is you've had a banged up Willie Nylander all season long. He comes back before the Milan Games. He's going to go over there and play for Team Sweden. You got Austin Matthews. You got some other guys that are playing for their countries. You don't know what those guys are going to look like or if they're going to be available coming back, especially because they've been nursing injuries. So, I got them out as well.
And I was looking at Toronto's schedule when they come out of the break. They play Tampa, Florida back-to-back. Then they got Ottawa, Philly, the Rangers, some games you got to beat, New Jersey and the Rangers to where they're at. But then they play Carolina again, and the Islanders, and Boston, and Buffalo, and Minnesota, and Tampa Bay again. Like they just got a real tough sched coming out of it. And that's why it's not only the points you have to make up, it's who you're playing. And a lot of times when you can say, you can control your destiny because you face the teams you're chasing. And that's true. But a lot of those other teams, like there's so many teams in the mix, they're all facing each other. And what's going to happen here is I think we've already seen a lot of 3-point games. You're probably going to see more. So you win the game, but you win it in overtime. You win it in a shootout, or, you're chasing Buffalo and you win, but they lose in a shootout or overtime. And that's what happens down the stretch. And it's so hard to make up ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where we're at right now. I haven't looked at this for a while, but you remember when we were talking in like December, the league was setting a record of overtime games. So, I mean, they're on a pace to kind of shatter how many overtime games there had been in an NHL season. So right there shows you that's why the standings are what they are. because we still to this day, even though we're talking 57, 56 games played, I still think we don't know a lot about some teams, because you've got some teams that are getting in overtime. Maybe they're getting their points in overtime. Maybe they're losing a ton of games in overtime. It's hard to evaluate in 3-on-3 and shootouts. What does that mean for the team? That's why the regulation wins, the goal differential, all that stuff. Everyone can have their own measurements of it, means so much. But yeah, I mean, it's kept everybody in the mix. And that's why I think it's so difficult, Greg's, to come out of this break or even up to this point and assess who your team is and where we are in the grand scheme of things. Like, do you, if you're in the mix, are you a buyer at the deadline? Like, that might be, and you might be self-evaluating poorly. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really tough spot, because the standings might tell you something, but your eyes and your heart watching your team play might be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe this is not the year to sell off some assets to go for it. So it's an interesting spot, man. I don't envy some of the decisions that have to be made.
Well, Rupper, I can give you an update on the overtime games. So right now, the NHL has played 908 games. The regular season has 1,312. 233 games have gone to overtime, and they're on pace for 336. The most we've ever seen is 307. And that was back in the 2014 season. And then there was 306 the year after that. And then it dropped down. But this year it's way back up. Games decided in a shootout, 83 already this year. That's more than last year, had 77, more than the year before that had 82. Now, then it's not going to break the record in 2014 and 15. There's tons of games going to shootouts then. And then they changed the overtime rule to 3-on-3, because they realized like 44% of games were decided in overtime back then. Yeah. There was 178 games in a shootout. No one wants to see that, but we're on pace to see like the third or fourth most. Like, it's brutal. You don't want to see that. There's more overtime games. You and I have talked about this before. Get put over and back into overtime on 3-on-3, because they changed the rules from 4-on-4 because there was too many games decided in a shootout. And now we're trending back to that again, because coaches and teams are like, oh, I don't have the rush. Now we circle back in the neutral zone, and it wastes time, and it's boring as sin. But because there's so many more points, people are going to look and say, wow, everybody's playing better this year. You need more points to get in the playoffs. I'm like, well, there's more points because there's more 3-point games. That's the only difference, right? So are teams playing better, or is there just more, closer games? And closer games don't necessarily mean the teams are better overall. It just means there's a little bit more parity in the league this year. And on a night to night, you can see a lot of 2-2 games go to overtime, or 3-3 games go to overtime. And that's what we're seeing.
Can I just throw, I know we've been talking about it and following it, but we're talking about trying to see who's who and what's what. Just that regulation wins column. It's starting to get a little bit silly with some of the teams. That's why I think the self-evaluation. Now, let's use the LA Kings as an example. I love the move they went out and got Artemi Panarin. I think it was a fantastic move. I love the deal that they got for him, and they got him signed to that extension. So that there's more to it. But right now, when you look at them, 56 games played, 56, and you've got 14 regulation wins. You in the game of hockey, the way that playoffs are, 5-on-5, you've only outright won 14 out of 56. That's not a good hockey club. That's not a good hockey club. But you look at them, 3 points out of a playoff spot. Now, does that mean that you sit there as management and be like, oh, well, we're not going to. No, you try to get in. You try to get in. You try to take advantage. But I think to a certain level, that Artemi Panarin deal is fantastic because of all the things I just mentioned, and they didn't have to give up a ton for him. But I think you also have some limits on what you're willing to do right now.
Yeah, well, I saw the interview with Ken Holland, and he thought even leading up to that maybe the trade was dead. And obviously Panarin, his no movement clause, he controlled a lot of this, because people will look and say they didn't even have to give up a first. Now, Liam Greentree is a pretty good player. Don't kid yourselves here. Yeah. To me, he's more valuable than a first round selection, because you're giving a first round selection of a young kid who's 17 or 18, and you have a much better idea of what you have in Greentree. And so, I like him better. Plus, they gave up a third, which might become a second if they win a round. So as long as they don't face Edmonton, they probably have a chance. to win a round of the playoffs based on their past history. But that I love that trade for LA. And so that strengthens them a lot. So now I'm curious to see, what does Utah do? What does Anaheim do? What does Edmonton do? What does Seattle do to try to counter that? We heard that Seattle was in big time, and they offered way more, but Panarin didn't want to go to Seattle, right? And that's going to happen. And that's why I know there's always players are only choosing no state tax. Really, Panarin didn't choose.
That's a great. No, I love that. 100%. Yeah, exactly.
So don't give me that garbage, right?
Doesn't that go back to the conversation that we've said, though? And I know a lot of people are going to not like Tampa because they're not going to like Tampa because they won. Any team that wins and has been successful, people aren't going to like. But they're not going to like Tampa because a lot of people thought that there was cap circumventing going on there with the LTIR and all that stuff. And you got an argument there, and that stuff that happened in the past. And you think it's not fair, then the Florida Panthers are able to sign all their guys. They've won. They've ticked people off in the process of doing that. But at the end of the day, what's come out on the argument side of the no state tax is not fair is you've got to have the right culture. You got to have the right team. You got to win. And this is an example of it. I want to go back and talk about Seattle for a second, but they're not there yet. That wasn't viewed as being a team that that was ready to win. Or for whatever the circumstances were, there's a lot of money left on the table. I mean, you're hearing the 4 times 14, pretty significant for Artemi Panarin, and quite a bit more than what he got. He got as far as dollars and term. Now, with that being said, I love the fact that Seattle was aggressive. And I think that's an awesome, like you and I have talked about it. What is this franchise? When are they going to stake their flag? When are they going to do something here? Like they're this middling ground that like this gives us a little bit of a snapshot. They're trying. And I love that. I love that. It didn't work out for whatever circumstances that is, but they're a team that's going to be circling on a lot of different things because I think they know they have to do something to change their course. So I love the fact that they stepped up. Their fans should as well. But that's one where, no state tax did not win.
Yeah. Exactly. And it doesn't always win. And that's fine. I don't think it should, to be honest. So, LA, if people are worried about taxes, hey, Panarin chose there and he chose 11 mil Rupper. So it wasn't like he had to get 13 to compensate for the higher tax bracket. He took 11. And I think that's a great contract for the LA Kings, to be honest, man. It's a shorter term deal, right? If he's still producing at 36, well, then you can sign him to an extension. And it gives them a short term replacement, a better replacement as far as an offensive player. So I like that trade a lot for LA, especially for a team desperate for offense. You bring in an offensive minded player, and that, I don't know if it's going to have the Quinn Hughes effect that we saw in Minnesota, where Quinn Hughes came in and just pushed everybody down the lineup on their blue line, and they're playing even better, right? He's their go-to offensive guy. Well, that's Panarin. And Panarin, at bare minimum, I would think, is going to help their power play, which is dreadful.
The power play is terrible. So that's an area that he thrives. But then the other standpoint, too, when you look at that roster, they got some talent, man. Like, let's not forget, I know they're not scoring goals, but Kevin Fiala, he can get going. Like, he is not an offensive driver, but Kevin Fiala can get as hot as anybody in the NHL and get going on a tear. Adrian Kempe, I don't know if he's an offensive driver. He's a hell of a player. Well, now you got someone to help carry that make that lift, and then moving forward, Anze Kopitar after the season, not going to be there. You need to see, we've seen some great from Quentin Byfield. We've seen some concerns as far as plateauing by Quentin Byfield. Well, he's going to have an opportunity ultimately through this stretch to play with Artemi Panarin. So I think that's going to bring the most out of him.
Yeah. Quickly looking at a few other teams kind of on the playoff bubble where we look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, Rupper. They've won 7 in a row. Yeah. They are 4 points behind the Islanders, who keep winning, but they have 2 games in hand, right? Like the Penguins and the Islanders are making it hard for Columbus. Columbus is 4 points back now of Boston as well, and they have a game in hand on them. It's been a great run for the Blue Jackets. Is it enough? Do you think they have enough? And there was lots of talk about them, guys like, hey, Boone Jenner, Charlie Coyle, players but I can't see now Don Waddell trading away guys. I think he might try to add. I'm not sure he's going to make a big splash, but I could see him trying to add like one depth guy just to give some juice to the room. All right, they believe in us. We added a guy. I think there's some other teams that are probably a little disappointed here because Columbus had some center icemen, and there's lots of teams searching for center icemen that I think are suddenly going to be off the market.
Yeah, and the one thing that I really like about them, they're a pretty heavy team. They got some big boys. And so there's going to be some games. I mean, they certainly have skill. They have this ability. I mean, they're winning without Marchenko in the lineup. Like he might be their best offensive guy. They've got some pieces offensively, but they've got this size too that can find ways to generate. Charlie Coyle's been fantastic for them. And really, like we talked about it when Rick Bowness got hired. That was Don Waddell was very, very open about it. They believe that they were attempting to get in. So they were in dead last. We want to get in. This coaching move is for that and only that. So, where they're sitting right now, they got a game in hand on Buffalo and Boston, and they're 4 points back on Boston. Now, if you were to tell me, I'm sorry, are they 2 back now? All right, so
no. They got there. 2. No, they're 4 points back of the Islanders with 2 games in hand as well in their own division.
Sorry, yeah, because that's the better path for the Metro teams is the top 3 in the Metro. So I wasn't even looking at that right now. So so that we're talking wild card is completely available for them, but a quicker path may be the New York Islanders or Pittsburgh Penguins is the 2 and 3 spot in the Metro. So yeah, man, they totally can get in, and I actually am leaning towards them getting in. I don't think both the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders get in. So I think one of those teams is probably going to come out, and that's probably the easiest path, if there is an easy path, for the Columbus Blue Jackets. But even without that, they're in striking distance of the Boston Bruins. So yeah, I right now, as of today, I think Columbus gets in.
Well, the thing about the Blue Jackets, and man, the schedule maker every now and then looks like a genius, because Columbus has 5 games remaining before the trade deadline when they resume. Their first 2 games coming out of the break, Boston and the Islanders, the 2 teams that are 4 points ahead of them, the old proverbial 4-pointer, Rupper. And so, if you're Columbus, that is like, man, you're coming back when you got practice, you come back. I'm sure they're taping up the standings. They circle the teams, boom. That's who we're playing, boys. Like, you're so juiced up. It's easy to look and say, hey, we can close that gap. We don't need someone else to beat them. We'll just beat them ourselves. And, and I guess worst case scenario, if they lose both of those games head to head, then maybe Don Waddell in a crazy thing. Like, if they struggle in their 5 games before the trade deadline, 2 of them coming head to head, then maybe they do all of a sudden sell guys off. So they're the buyer seller predictions here is really going to come down right until I think March 3rd or 4th, because there's a lot of teams, like if Columbus wins those games, no chance they're trading away guy. But if they lose both, then maybe all of a sudden they're like, oh geez, now we're 8 points out and now there's only 23 games left. So what do we do?
I agree. I mean, I think they show any kind of glimpse of picking up after this break, Don Waddell is going to be adding. He 100% is going to try to push them. And this is a franchise that needs the playoffs. They need to get in there. So it kind of makes you root for them a little bit. This is like an underdog story in some ways, and they've pushed back in a big way.
Now, you mentioned the Penguins, right? Both them and the Islanders won their last game. The Islanders beat the Devils. The Islanders won scoring. They only had 14 shots on goal, and they won 3-1, for goodness sakes. But the Penguins beat the Sabres in a really big game. And you look at this Pittsburgh team. So Avery Hayes scores his first 2 NHL goals. And in the same game, Rupper, they get another big goal from, 2 goals from Ben Kindle. I'll say this about the Penguins that's impressive is they've surprised a lot of people this year. And obviously Crosby and Malkin and Letang, the core 3 that have been there forever, 20 years. But they brought in some young guys. And Ben Kindle, we haven't seen what Ben Kindle's done really for a guy who's not a top 5 pick. You got to go back to Ryan O'Reilly and those are the last 2. Ryan O'Reilly and Patrice Bergeron, I thought, there were actual 18-year-olds, Rupper, drafted outside the top 5 who made impacts on their team. Now, the Boston team wasn't that good. The Colorado team wasn't that good. Pittsburgh is a good team. But man, the Ben Kindle story, we're probably not talking about it enough. An 11th overall pick, 18-year-old kid. No one thought he was going to do much. And then Hayes comes up here and he pots 2 goals in a huge game. Right? That was a big game against the Buffalo Sabres.
I think that's maybe what rejuvenated this team is, and that's all part of the process. Like Kyle Dubas wants his team to get younger. They want to, he's trying to get more competitive now, but build for the future and get younger. And sometimes that doesn't always translate into being a better team or getting more wins. And it has here. So I think it's kind of revitalized this franchise in a lot of different ways. But the thing with Ben Kindle that's been really nice is if you go back to the beginning of the season, and this team's power play in Pitt has been top 5 pretty much all season long, I believe. And Kindle was a big part of it. So he was on that left flank side and he plays with the big boys. He doesn't defer. He plays with them. I mean, we saw earlier in the season him playing 5-on-5 with those guys, the big boys as well, but he doesn't have to. And he's not right now. He can center his own line. And I think that's what makes this team dangerous, because now you have a legitimate, Crosby, you got Gino playing on the wing with Tommy Novak. But then you've got Ben Kindle on the third line. He's so intelligent, Greg's. Talking to guys in Pittsburgh, this kid is a stud, and he thinks the game really well. So that's fantastic. And then Avery Hayes, first NHL game last night. I mean, you've got this kid coming in here. I mean, he's 23 years old, not a very big kid, but man, he darts around. And watching that game last night, I'm like, oh my, who's he? He's flying. And so it's just a cool story. Undrafted, put up a good amount of points and goals in the Ontario Hockey League. But, he's been in the American League for the good parts of 3 years. He's getting an opportunity, and he gave him a spark. And that's what this team needs. When they need a spark this year, it's been other guys. That's the key. It's always been the last number of years. When you needed a spark, it's coming from 87. It's coming from 17. It's coming from, the same guys. Now it's Anthony Mantha's having an incredible year. You got Justin Brazeau, incredible season. Chinnikov's come over here from Columbus, and they're getting contributions from all over the lineup. Last night, 2 young guys carried him over the top.
Yeah, Hayes scored 2 goals in 10 minutes and 9 seconds of ice time, right? So you're getting, because I see a lot of people, you got to play your bottom guys more. The truth of the matter is, it's a hard job to be able to produce. And Rupp better than anyone, right? This fallacy of, Florida, look at Florida's 4th line guys in the playoffs. They played 7 under 8 minutes one year, 8.5 the next year, and they still scored 2 or 3 goals in 16 games, right? Because they didn't even dress every game. Yeah. So you got to find a way to contribute. They were physical, and that's just what you do. So it's not, we got to play. Every 3rd and 4th line guy would love to play 13 or 14 minutes. The reality is it just doesn't happen on any team. And
that's where the value is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's, you hit the nail on the head. We see players, and as fans, they call for more ice time. And I get it, because I've been a player that has had not every year in my career. I didn't really produce much as far as points, but I had a couple years where you start putting the puck in the net a little bit more. And then naturally it's give him more ice time, give him more ice time. No, I wanted more ice time, but the truth behind it all, it's I'm giving the team something that's unique. If I can play 10 minutes of ice time and score 15 goals on the season, that's a good hockey club. Now, if you move me up to a second line, that I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I'm going to be on a higher clip. It's you get these things. I think it gets misconstrued, or you see guys in free agency then go and sign these big tickets. For an example, Kiefer Sherwood, I don't believe he's a top 6 guy. And I think the whole time when you're talking about trading for him, when he's in Vancouver and what he's doing, look at the clip he's going on, this and that. All right, put that on line 3. Now you're cooking with gas. You know what I mean? So I think that's some of the stuff here that Pittsburgh has going well from these guys. These young players can produce with, not getting big time minutes.
Yeah. We should update one thing, actually. The Florida pick, interesting enough, Rupper, is top 10 protected. Puckpedia has just updated their site. It wasn't, they had it not listed, but it is now top 10. The Panthers currently would be 11th. Now there's the lottery and everything that goes into it, right? But so depending, for them, worst case scenario would be, I guess, to finish 11th and not move up and then not win the lottery. And now you're picking 11th, right? Or you finish 10th and one of the teams behind you wins the lottery and then you bump down to 11th. Like, that would be the worst scenario. So it is top 10 protected. So there you go. Now over to the West, because we talk about teams that you look at, and the West it's a little bit more of a turtle race right now. If we look at overall points, let's be honest, but it's close. We know the Central Division, the top three teams they're in for sure. The Pacific has Vegas, Edmonton, Seattle, Anaheim, LA, all within 8 points of one another. Vegas in the driver's seat with 68. Edmonton's second right now with 64, but LA is ninth in the conference, but they're 4 points back with 2 games in hand. So Edmonton is far from safe by any stretch of imagination. They played horribly in their final 3 games going into the break. They need to play way better defensively. Their goaltending needs to be better. I think their coaching's got to adjust some things. Stop loading up McDavid and Draisaitl. It's not working this year. I've got all the numbers to back it up. Draisaitl's better on his own. Just keep him away from McDavid. It makes your team harder to defend from an opposing standpoint. But, LA is currently in that 9th spot. And they just added Panarin. So I think they're a legit team to push Anaheim and Seattle and Utah and even Edmonton for a playoff spot. What about the Predators? The Predators are 4 points behind the Ducks. They do have the Kings in front of them. Where do you see the Preds? Do you think they got a legit shot? I know that Barry Trotz is stepping down, but he's still going to be running trade deadline and everything for Nashville. What do you think are they just going to wait and be a team that sees what happens in their 4 games after the deadline? After the break before the deadline to make a decision?
I think so. I think so. I mean, they've had this pushback that's been very, fun to watch because we thought they were dead in the water. Remember, if you go back in the season a little bit, it was probably them, Vancouver, St. Louis were the 3 teams that we were talking about that are the pure sellers. And then all of a sudden Nashville turns it on and they're in the mix here. But to go back on what we were saying, I don't know where the mindset is here with the group. They've got quite a few pending UFAs. So the obvious is, did you move those guys? I mean, I don't think they're going to add. I wouldn't guess they would be. But then you've got some of the players that we've talked about where there's a market for a Ryan O'Reilly, a Steven Stamkos, like those names we've heard all the time this season. So what are you going to do with that? Like those guys, you still got them under contract. I personally don't think. I love what they're doing. They have character. We've known that they've had character. I just don't think they are a very good hockey club. I think if you're going to sit there and you're going to get into the playoffs, I know that means a lot for organizations as far as gate and for the fan base and all that stuff. I just think that you and I think they are. You're scouring the market to see what you could potentially get for some of these players. And if that is something and you get the number or the price you want or the return you want, you do it. I just don't think this team is going to be able to win a round in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, they come out, they have 5 games before the deadline. They play Chicago first. That's a game you have to win. Then they're in Dallas. Then they're home to Detroit, they're home to Detroit, in Columbus, and then home to Boston. So, the last 4 teams are all teams either in the playoff spot or battling right there in Columbus. And so they don't have an easy sked at all in those stretch of games. And so that might impact them. You consider, you mentioned their UFAs, pending UFAs, Michael Bunting, Eric Halla, Michael McCarron, I think would have some interest. Then there's, you look at the bigger picture, Ryan O'Reilly has 1 year after this. And I think he'd be highly sought after by a lot of teams as a center, no movement clause. But Barry Trotz has admitted that he would kind of treat him with respect to say, hey, do you want to go or not? Now, do you like that decision if you're Barry Trotz as an organization? But because if you had a really good deal on the table, and even if it wasn't a team that Ryan O'Reilly wants to go to, but it's going to benefit your organization, do you make that trade?
That's your job to do that. So, I mean, it's I respect it. I think Barry Trotz has always been a guy that garners respect. And so I respect that. And I like the fact that he's showing that type of respect to a player and Ryan O'Reilly. But, maybe that's, I don't know. The way I always kind of look at it too, for that stuff to get public, to me, is just throwing the, I don't know, flirting out there into the airwaves that it's going to take a lot to get Ryan O'Reilly out of Nashville. You know what I mean? Like that's what that means to me. It's like, it's a way of saying we're not going to move him unless he wants to, but then you're going to have teams maybe that understand that's going to be a tough one to get out of there. I don't know. I always try to read between the lines on those things. I like it if it's true. But it's something that if you get a great deal and the center market is not great after Vinny Trocheck, and Ryan O'Reilly and so on and so forth, you make that move. So I don't know. We'll see how that one plays out.
Okay. What about Seattle? What do you think they'll do?
I think there's two teams for me, Seattle being one of them, that they've got to be on the prowl here and looking to do something. We just talked about how they were making that massive offer for Artemi Panarin as far as extension wise. So you know that they understand where they're at and how they need to kind of strike in this moment, even down the stretch to get in. I would put Utah Mammoth in that category too. I think Utah, this is the year that Bill Armstrong has to do something to give a shot to his team. They've shown that they can compete. They've shown that they should be a playoff team. They got to get some extra help going in the playoffs. But back to Seattle, I mean, Seattle's just tough because I just think that they're a group that when their goaltending is good, they're good. When their goaltending, and this is a pretty obvious statement, you can say this for any NHL team, I just don't think they have parts of their game that can offset subpar goaltending. And they need to have really solid goaltending. And I think Joey Decord's been awesome for them. Phil Grubauer had a stretch where he was incredible as well. And when they get average goaltending, they just simply don't score enough to win. And so I think that they're a little bit delicate for me because I think they do need some help. It's hard for them to score goals. So that's hence why they were in on Artemi Panarin. I don't know what to make of them. I genuinely think that they're a team that probably shouldn't make it in, but I don't want to discredit everything they've done this year. Like, it's been a fun team to watch because I wasn't expecting much out of them.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll be interested to see but obviously they were looking to add, man. They've swung big on Artemi Panarin, right? And because that would have solved some of their biggest problems. And there's like guys like Panarin don't come available. So I love the fact they were aggressive. You had to. You're a team and organization. It's hard to find legit top six scorers. Teams that have them, I think their fans probably don't realize how hard they are to get, right? Like especially when you have multiple guys. Right. And so Seattle, like it's, like I see them, maybe they're going to trade Shane Wright. I'm saying, I don't know, offense. I don't think Shane Wright's getting you a legit bona fide top six scoring player with any sort of contract, maybe. And even then, I don't think Shane Wright would have got you Panarin. You would have had to offer maybe even more, to be honest. So Seattle, I give them credit to do it. And it's hard to find those guys. So when those guys come available, you have to take a big swing. Yeah. And overpaying a little bit for Seattle would have been fine because they don't have anybody else who's due a big contract at any time soon, right? So they wouldn't have been a team that's in trouble cap-wise. So I think that was fine. I am interested and I'm curious. I don't think Rupper, and here's the hard part for Jason Botterill, their general manager. So let's say you look and you're realistic. Geez, I'm not sure, we can win a playoff round. But maybe you look and say, hey, we could beat Anaheim. We could beat LA, right? We might play one of them. You never know. But if you're Seattle and you're sitting there and you're like, well, geez, I'm not sure if we could win a playoff round. But man, we got some guys that other teams, might give us some good assets for. Like Jamie Alexiak, I think lots of teams would pay a pretty hefty price point. And that's going to be the balance for him. And I think they might trade him anyway and still think they could make the playoffs because of their other defensemen.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it gets delicate. And I for whatever reason, something in me is leaning towards, because you mentioned Alexiak. Obviously, he's the big one there. No pun intended, huge man on the back end, being a pending UFA. But like, I think this is a franchise. It's important to make the playoffs for every franchise, but I think it's even more important where you'd be willing to eat in pending UFAs and have them walk. I think they're one of those. I think they are something where I'm not even talking necessarily financially as a franchise. They're still trying to make their footprint in Seattle. Like, they're still trying to grow that fan base. Like, you have to have playoff hockey. That's the quickest way to grow a fan base. I remember having a conversation with a GM a couple years ago, and I'm just making up numbers here, but it was something in this range where the GM said to me, making the playoffs is everything for us. Not even necessarily going on that run. I mean, you obviously want to win a Stanley Cup. That's what everybody plays for. But the business side of it, what they saw in season ticket sales and growth in their region was massive. Just consecutive years of making the playoffs. So, like, say for an example, you're 10,000 or say 8,000 season ticket holders. You make the playoffs the next year, that went up 2,500 season ticket holders. Then the next year it goes up again, and it goes up again. And the next thing you know, you have to cap your season tickets. Like it's something. You have to be in the playoffs. I think that's where Seattle is. So regardless of what we think is the best thing for them, as far as, hey, you can't eat this with Jamie Alexiak because he's a lot of value, I think you got to weigh all those options. So I think it's imperative for Seattle as a franchise to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I wonder if they feel, hey, maybe we can do both. We can make the playoffs and still move out Alexiak, because we have Dunn and we have Montour and you have Larson, you have Lindgren and Riker, and that maybe they feel the rest is good enough. And that's going to be, I think, their biggest deciding point leading up to that March 6th trade deadline. Let's welcome to the pod, Pat. Patty, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Getting excited for the Milan Games coming up here soon. We'll keep the questions today to the NHL, but soon we're going to have some questions on that. So I'm getting excited. But as always, brought to you by Bet365. This is fill in the blank. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary. Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION. Bet365 must be 19 or older. First question for you. I mean, Gavin McKenna has been in the news lately for his alleged assault, and the conversation has been, will this affect his draft rank? Even though some are saying it might make it better. I'm not asking about that. What I will ask you, though, is for fill in the blank, your top 3 NHL prospects going into the 2026 draft as of right now, Greg's.
I still have McKenna in there. Verhoff's an interesting one to me, because I'll be honest, I talk to the guys who watch these players. I've seen them play 3 times, which isn't enough for me to make any real accurate assessment of what he's going to be as a player. Also, I'm always intrigued about young players, because guys who spend hours and hours on them don't get them right. You know why? Because it's freaking hard. And they're 17-year-old players, and sometimes it's situational, whatever. But to me, it's McKenna and Stenberg, I think, are the top 2. I'd probably put Verhoff as number 3, but I don't know if it's like blatantly obvious. I do think Stenberg and McKenna are 1 and 2, and I think McKenna's in a situation where people are starting to try to find reasons they don't like the player, and that's happened many times before.
Yeah, I mean, when you have these players that are projected as this first overall pick in the future draft, and it's been like that for 2-3 years, like that's what it seems like it always develops to, like just trying to find ways like, oh man, he hasn't done this or he hasn't done that. But you're soon to forget what they did to get in that conversation as a 15-year-old to begin with, and stay in that until they're 18. So, I mean, hey, listen, guys, I'll be honest, like I'm not the biggest guy to ask on the draft. I am a believer in what I've seen of Gavin McKenna. I think it's really interesting, and we could be proven wrong here, because I think if you rewind a year ago, we would have assumed that Matthew Schaefer, the best thing for him would have been to go back to the OHL, which seems crazy right now, right? Because he's the best defenseman on the Islanders, and he's going to be a runaway for the Calder race. But I do think Gavin McKenna is the one for me. I've seen enough from him, regardless of what happened in the last week or so, that just, I think the best thing for him would probably be to go back to college next year and dominate. And because he's a very good college player from what I've seen, but he's not dominating. I think that's why people are like, "Whoa, is he hit a wall here?" No, man, it's an adjustment. He's a young kid still. So without knowing enough about the other players that have come into the picture, I still got to be on the hype train for Gavin McKenna.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Moving on to the second question. We have a brand new Norris leader. I don't know if you guys noticed this on Bet365. Zach Werenski is now the favorite at -120. Cale Makar jumping back to +100. Behind him, Lane Hudson at +2200. So a big jump there. But there was a point this season where it was Cale Makar versus the field. You could take that bet. So those are probably looking pretty good right now in the cash outs. But my question for you, if you have a Norris vote today, who are you picking, Rupp?
So I want to ask you this with that on the screen, Greg's. This is where I go with it. I mean, my Norris pick today probably is going to be Werenski. And I hesitate there because it's been Cale Makar all season long. But here's my question too. And you could say this about Lane Hudson. You could say this about Quinn Hughes. But I want to use Zach Werenski as the main example. Do you kind of look at it from the standpoint of influence on the team, almost like we do the Hart Trophy? You know what I mean? It's like we've talked Macklin celebrating how he should certainly be in that Hart Trophy conversation for the obvious, because he's carrying the San Jose Sharks. Like, is it a wrong way for me to look at it for the Norris and say, well, Zach Werenski, what he's doing, he's leading points, he's going to get 30 goals, all these things, and look at his team around him? I don't know. We don't really talk about it that way. It's usually just the most dominant defenseman, which we would just say is Cale Makar pretty much all the time. So I'm interested what you have to say about that. Like, should we be looking at the team surrounding him and taking that into account?
I do think it plays a factor. The one thing he doesn't, like Cale Makar, people will look at his, goal for and goals against. I'm like, yeah, well, he's playing with the best line in hockey in Natchez and McKinnon and Lehkonen, right? They're all Olympians. Yeah. That's how good that line is, right? They're all Olympians, all five of them. So they kind of play as a 5-man unit, like fair amount of. I look at Werenski and he doesn't, like, Makar plays more minutes with all four of those guys than Werenski plays more minutes with anybody in Columbus. He plays with lots of different players and he impacts the game. But I will say this, at +3,000, Quinn freaking Hughes, that's the best bet out there. Are you joking?
100%.
Quinn Hughes has moved right up there. Now, he doesn't have the goals, but he's got 57 points in 52 games. He's breaking records all over the place. He's playing almost 28 minutes a night for the Minnesota Wild. And like, he's completely changed their game in Minnesota because they desperately needed an offensive defenseman. He's come in there and the guy is delivering. It's unreal what he's doing. So just from a pure value, I would probably put a little bit of money on Quinn Hughes right now. But if I had to pick today, it's Werenski, because I think everything, plays penalty kill, does everything in all different facets of the game. You look at what he's doing 5-on-5, and he doesn't play with as good of players 5-on-5, and he still is out producing the other guys. So to me, I like Werenski's game a lot. But man, at +3,000, sign me up for Quinn Hughes. Yeah.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with that. And that's of the same ilk that I'm talking about, like the influence that Quinn has had on the Minnesota Wild. And so, but just to even go back to Werenski too, and again, Cale Makar has been the guy all season long. I think that you can have, and this is what we've had in hockey for the last however long. For me, there was a long time where Victor Hedman was the best defenseman in hockey. Now, did he win the Norris every year? No. But the Norris doesn't mean, in my opinion, you're the best defenseman in hockey. Is that you had the best season for a defenseman. So I thought that was Victor Hedman for the longest time until Cale Makar came along. Now, Cale Makar for me is the best defenseman in hockey, but he doesn't have to win the Norris all the time, kind of to support that. So, but here's the thing I want to point out. You mentioned all those guys that he plays with the forward-wise in Colorado. Devon Toews is Olympian too. And that's his deep partner and has been for a long time. Now, you look in Columbus. And I don't mean this as an indictment on these guys. Zach Werenski's playing with Damon Severson, or he's playing with you talk about their decor. Like, look, their decor is Provorov, Matejchuk, you got Fabro, Gudbranson. Like, these aren't, Olympians. These aren't like high-end defensemen. They serve a purpose, and they've been very good for the Columbus Blue Jackets. But man, do they rely very heavily on Zach Werenski.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the Vezina as well, because there was a time where Vasilevsky, I got him at plus 850, and Gregor was talking about him a little bit, so I put some on it. Now he's plus 125, so they want me to cash out real bad, but it's kind of the same thing where you pick a player like Quinn Hughes right now, plus 3,000, come April, he might be a little bit closer, and you can maybe even just cash out there, but definitely not a bad pick whatsoever. The third and final question I have for you guys, and it's pretty simple. We're just, because we're going into the break right now, which team needed this break the most? We've had this conversation recently, but it could go either way. Oilers have lost 3 in a row. Rangers have lost 4 in a row, but they're pretty out of it, so does it matter as much? And then on the other side, you said the Columbus Blue Jackets have won 7 in a row. The Lightning have won 5 in a row. So who is this break going to affect the most, Gregs?
Oh God. I wonder, it's momentum. When you're rolling, you want to keep playing, right? So I look at a team like Columbus, and man, you've won 7 in a row. They want to keep going. So there's always that concern. I think it benefits the teams who have played the most games, because they've gotten through their most condensed part of the schedule, right? And when you come out of this, like, you look at Tampa Bay. Now, Tampa Bay is in a great position, but Tampa Bay is going to have to play more games than everybody else coming out of the break, right? Them and the Sharks and Colorado, right? They've got to play 27 games down the stretch, where some teams are playing 23, 24 in a shorter period of time. So I would say it probably benefits the teams who have played the most games, because their schedule coming out now, they get rest, they get 2 weeks off, and they get some practice time, but 3 weeks without games. And it also benefits the teams who have the fewest guys going to the Olympics, because those guys get a full break.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off that way of thinking and say the team that's played the most games in the NHL, and that's the Washington Capitals. I think the Caps need a little bit of a recharge. Like, they've been they've been bad at times, and then they push back. Like, I think they're a better team than where they're currently at, and they're going to need a push. I don't know off the top of my head. Obviously, you got Tom Wilson, you got Logan Thompson, you got a few guys going over to Milan. But Ovi's not. They need him rested. They need him to be energized. And they're going to simply play less games on the other side. So I think this is going to be a massive advantage, or should be, I think, for the Washington Capitals.
All right. I think that's fair. I'm getting excited. Just a couple days away, but I'll leave you guys with it. That is Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Bet365.
It's kind of unique that you have 3 weeks to break down, and you can look at lots of different things and schedules and who's playing who, because I think that's really going to matter for a lot of these races for some teams. And in a weird way, Rupper, the fact that Barkov's taking morning skates, now they're 8 points out, and I know the Panthers, they don't care about a draft pick. They care about winning. But in a weird way, because it's top 10 protected, if Barkov come back and they don't make the playoffs, but they end up getting closer, then they have to give up the draft pick, right? It's like a weird thing. And I know that they're going to say, hey, if Barkov comes back, we're going to win games, as they should. I totally understand it. But in a weird way, him coming back might hurt their draft pick a little bit more, right? So it's just a weird one that way. So something to follow for them. The other teams, it's, and then the other big wild card will be, does anybody get hurt who's playing in Milan? Yeah. Right? That's, I hope it. I know history shows there's the odd guy that gets banged up. I get it. And then the fact you got the illness that's already, in the athletes' village, Robert. I'm going to guess you're going to see some NHL teams say, and players say, I think we'll avoid that if we can.
Yeah. You don't want to see any of that. And it's tough. I mean, there's going to be injuries. I mean, heck, there's guys that are injured or they're going there playing. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. I think, I don't know. I think there's guys that are banged up going there. That's why the Braden Point thing, and we're hearing kind of how he managed it. And what he's saying, I'm not at 100%. And he's going to do what's best for him. And quite frankly, maybe Team Canada of giving that spot up to someone else. I mean, that's a pretty humble thing to do. So, but yeah, it's always part of it. That's the risk you run. But I think it's a dangerous, slippery slope when you go into the Olympics nursing an injury, and not just for what's going to happen in that tournament, but what that does to your NHL team. And I would hate the optics of, no matter who you are and where you're at in the standings, to come back from the games and not be available for your NHL club. I don't love that look.
Right. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but you know what? Hey, guess what? They could have not gone, could have kept the regular season going and got hurt anyway. Right. Like the thing about an injury is it's very unpredictable. So I love the fact that the players are in it. Best on best is great. I think it's fantastic for the NHL. I think in a weird way, Rupper, there might be a little bit of a letdown from people who saw the Four Nations, especially in North America, because there's not going to be three fights in Canada, US to start, because the rules are very different in Milan. You get, you get a fighting major, you're out of the game, right? So it's totally different. And, you won't see Kachuk and Hagel, they went at it last night in Florida, Tampa Bay. They can't go at it again in the Olympics. Well, maybe they could, but they probably won't, and that's why I think moving forward, the NHL's version, whatever it's going to be called, it's not going to be called Four Nation, because it will have more opportunity for big rivals. The challenge is that, I look at Germany heading into this, into Milan. And, obviously you got one of the best players in the world in Draisaitl. And then you throw in Mo Seider and Stützle and Peterka. And, they got some guys. Now, they're obviously not, I don't think, going to compete for gold or silver or anything. But I think the German team is getting a lot better than they've ever had before. And could they finish second in their division and get into the play? Well, everybody gets technically into the playoff round, but in a better seeded playoff round, definitely. Right. And then, but for them in the future, how can they really ice a team in whatever the NHL calls it, unless the German Hockey Federation says, we'll send some of our guys who are playing in the German Elite League and the DEL over to this tournament, right? Because that's what you're going to have to do if you want it. So that I'm kind of curious in 2028, what's the name of it? I understand why Russia's not involved now. I get it. The war's terrible, but hopefully by 2028, they're back in it, because that means the war's over. And then they could be in it, because I want to see Kucherov in best on best. You joking, right? Kaprizov, Kucherov, go down the list of all those guys you want to see there. Yeah, I mean that roster is they're goalies, man. Yeah. Look at their goalies. Shesterkin, Sorokin, and Vasilevsky. And you'd have to pick a starting goalie. Are you right now, Vasilevsky or Sorokin? You'd be like, who the hell am I picking as a star? I'd probably rotate. That's what I would do. I mean, look how deep that is. The fact that you don't even have Bobrovsky as part of the conversation. Nobody is. Yeah. And he shouldn't be when you're talking about those guys. You know what I mean? So it's, I mean, I love that we're back to best on best. I still think there's still a bit of an evolution of what it's going to look like moving in the future. I love the NHL putting their stamp in whether it was Four Nations and what this is going to turn into World Cup. I personally would love for it all to be under the umbrella of the NHL. I think there's a way to make it even bigger and better. But right now, I'm excited to watch these games. Yeah, I can't wait, man. It's going to be awesome. We had the women's game started already, in a weird postponement game for Canada and Finland. Now I understand why. Just anybody that got the norovirus going through the Finnish team, and they didn't want to risk it because I know people said, well, why not just have them forfeit? Well, they wouldn't have forfeited. They would have opted to play, even though just because you don't want to forfeit, and they would have played sick, and then they might have gotten the Canadians sick. So I actually like this decision where some common sense said, hey, wait a sec, we could force them to play because they're not going to forfeit, right? You only get one chance every 4 years. They're not forfeiting a game. But then now you run the risk of infecting the other team. Yeah. And so I think Canada and Finland both were like, hey, if we can try to make this work, let's make it work. It's not ideal for the schedule, but you make it work and then you move on. And here's the thing, though. I don't think Finland had a chance to win gold or silver anyway, Rupper, but you got that norovirus going through you. I don't care, even if you're, quote, over it in a few days, you your body is run down.
He's done.
Right? Like I don't think they got any chance to really compete now.
No. I mean, it would just be gutting it out to do it. You're not going to have any juice to go play at the highest level. So yeah, it stinks. Saw that, and hopefully it's the end of it. Hopefully we don't see much of that over there in the games.
Well, I can't wait to the games. We still have a week, just less than a week to go, because the first game on the men's side gets going on the 11th. Then you got the other pools getting going on the 12th and 13th, and away we roll. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll have lots of hockey to discuss, and we'll look at some stats, Rupp, or two, of course, next week. But we'll have some games in Milan to discuss. So we'll get into all of that. Have yourself a great week. Enjoy a rare weekend off, Rupper.
Yes.
What is your other must-watch Olympic event?
Oh man, I'm a big Winter Olympic guy. I actually really like I like downhill skiing. I struggle with this, even though I watch it and learn so much about it. What's the one called where you cross country ski and then you shoot things, shoot the targets? What's that one? Is that the biathlon? That one's super fun. Just learning and listening to people explain how they got to bring their heart rate down. I mean, everything's so interesting. I'm just I like it because it's whatever. It's the Winter Olympics, man. It's cold. You get the fire going. And you just veg out and watch all day.
Buddy, check out. I love a lot of like aerials and ski cross and snowboard cross. Man, those are awesome. And short track speed skating is unbelievable. Like it's just like roller derby on ice, and they're fast and they're jockeying for position. You're kind of body checking. It's it's wild. So I like a lot of the sports, man. I can't wait to see it all in Milan. So it should be a lot of fun. Have a great week, and that's the rundown brought to you by Bet365. Quinn Hughes plus 3,000. Just saying. Might want to for $5. It's worth it for $5. It could be a worthwhile opportunity. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.